Good evening, children. Today, we'll start with our sixth lesson, the circulatory system. In the textbook that I have, this is an old edition. It is given at page number 86. Maybe the page number might change in the new editions that you have. So let us start with the first topic, need for transport inside the body. Or in other words, what is the role that the circulatory system plays in our body? There are four systems which are directly dependent on circulatory system. That is digestive, respiratory, excretory and endocrine system or the system of hormones. Digestive system, we know that the system digests and absorbs the nutrients which are needed to be transported to every cell of the body. So who will transport? The circulatory system. When we talk of respiratory system, this draws in air, oxygen is picked up in the lungs and the same has to be transported to all parts of body. Similarly, carbon dioxide is to be collected from the entire body, carried back to the lungs and be exhaled out. So all this transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide brought by the circulatory system. Coming to the excretory system, here the system has to eliminate the waste, or in other words, excess water, excess salts, nitrogenous waste like urea, they have to be removed from the different parts and they have to be sent to the excretory system to be thrown out. Then, so who will take this waste and carry it to the excretory system? Once again, the circulatory system. The system of hormones or the chemical messengers or the endocrine system, this has to carry the hormones throughout the body by means of blood, right? And this will act wherever it is required. So again, directly comes the role of circulatory system to transport the hormones. Then the second topic to talk would be fluids in our body. Basically, there are three important and principal fluids in our body: blood, tissue fluid and the lymph. Of these three, blood and the lymph are the circulating fluids. So blood, as we know, is contained in the heart, then in the blood vessels, that is arteries, veins and capillaries of the circulatory system. Tissue fluid, this is present in the space between the cells in the organs. Or very rightly as said, this is the fluid that is present in the tissues of the organs and it bathes the different tissues. Lymph is contained within the lymph vessels and lymphatic organs like spleen and spleen and tonsils. So remember children, this is a very favorite question in ICSE, that name any lymphatic organ. So you have the answers. One is spleen, we also call it as the graveyard of the human body, and the tonsils. Then coming next is the two types of circulatory system. In animals, we have two types of circulatory systems. One we call as the open circulatory system and the other is called as the closed circulatory system. Why this is called open or closed is because of the vessels that are present or absent. Like in open system, there are no blood vessels or there are no circulatory vessels here. Examples, this is seen in insects. Blood flows mostly through open spaces in the body which are called sinuses. Blood flows from heart to body spaces without vessels. That means the vessels like arteries, veins and capillaries are absent and blood is just directly moving in open spaces. Then in closed system on the other hand, the blood circulates in a closed manner, that is all the time through blood vessels in the form of arteries, veins or capillaries. Example, in humans. So our body has a closed system of circulation in opposition to open system that is seen in the insects. Then coming to some category of non-circulating fluids, which includes number one, synovial fluid. This is present in the cavity of skeletal joints. And second is the vitreous humor, which is present in the eye. So as the name tells, non-circulating means these fluids, they do not circulate. Alright. So this Diagram, if you see figure 8.1, this is a diagrammatic representation of blood and lymph circulation. Red shows the oxygenated blood, blue shows the deoxygenated blood. See, remember children, in books, the blue color that shows blood is given for the dirty blood or deoxygenated blood. That is a blood deficient in oxygen and rich in carbon dioxide. Because blood is never blue in color. It is, if pure, it is bright red. If impure, it is dark red. But this is for your sake of understanding why we depict it as blue or red. So red in this case means the pure blood. This means the impure. So this is a system, how it shows between heart, lungs, then their capillaries and the lymph. So you can see the lymph nodes, that means the swellings or the places, how it is crossing through. Alright, so moving to the next topic, details of the blood. Blood, if we talk about the movement, it's always moving. This is never stationary and it's always in motion from the heart to the arteries and back through the veins. Remember children, if this is the heart, then blood moves out by arteries, that is a pure blood, and it is brought by veins. This we'll talk later when we are studying the details of the heart. But for just now, remember, arteries carry pure blood away from the heart, whereas veins carry impure blood back to the heart. Alright. Color of the blood, if we talk, just now I told you, it's showed like red and blue, but there's nothing like red and blue. We have bright red or dark red. Bright red means this is the blood seen in arteries in pure form. In other words, the better word for pure would be oxygenated. So we can write this as oxygenated blood because this is rich in oxygen and deficient in carbon dioxide. Similarly, when we say dark red, this means the blood which is impure, or better we can call as deoxygenated blood. Remember, D means without oxygen or less oxygen and more of carbon dioxide. That is why it is impure and it is found in the veins. Volume of the blood is 5 to 6 liters in an adult human being. The taste is saltish, right? And the pH is 7.3 to 7.45. Remember, 7 is the neutral value. So this value indicates the slightly alkaline nature of the blood. Next topic is the functions of blood. The main functions of blood, there are two. One is transport. This is the Roman heading I have written. One, transport. And the second is protection. So transport, just now we already had seen a brief amount of the different things being transported. But just now let's talk a detailed part of this. First thing is transport of digested food. So from the alimentary canal, the substances of food which are broken down to their final units, like let's say amino acids or fatty acids and glycerol or monosaccharides, they are transported to their places, right places. Then transport of oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. So who transport oxygen? This is a pigment called hemoglobin. In short, we write HB. So hemoglobin, H capital, B would be small. So this hemoglobin transports oxygen. See, rightly to say, hemoglobin has an affinity for oxygen, carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide all at the same time. I'll just show you. If given together, hemoglobin can attach itself with oxygen or carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, anybody. But its maximum affinity is for carbon monoxide. It's a very, very poisonous gas. Now, when hemoglobin combines with oxygen, the product formed is an unstable compound. We call it oxyhemoglobin. You can see the double arrow. That means once formed by the union of HB and oxygen, this will sometime break down and again will give back hemoglobin and oxygen. Similarly, hemoglobin when combines with carbon dioxide, it forms a compound called carbaminohemoglobin, which again by double arrow you can understand is unstable and will break down. But The maximum likeness for this gas, most poisonous carbon monoxide, when hemoglobin combines with carbon monoxide, it forms a stable compound. There's a single arrow. Stable means this substance, that is carboxyhemoglobin, HbCO, once formed will never break to release the hemoglobin. And the same is what we call as carbon monoxide poisoning. So hemoglobin, if this is an oxygen carrier, and suppose this is hooked with carbon monoxide, so there will be no free sites present on hemoglobin to carry oxygen, and thus a person dies in the same condition. We call this as carbon monoxide poisoning. Alright. So coming back to the functions of blood, just now we talked about transport of digested food, now transport of oxygen. So hemoglobin, as I told you, will form an unstable compound, oxyhemoglobin, Hb.CO2. This means it is unstable and can break up. Alright. So coming next would be compound of hemoglobin, that is transfer of hemoglobin, transfer of carbon dioxide by means of hemoglobin, forming a compound HbCO2, right? So this is from the tissues to the lungs, and it occurs partially in combination with hemoglobin and partly as solution in the blood plasma. Third is transport of excretory material. From where to where? This is from the tissues to the liver, kidneys or the skin to be eliminated. Then distribution of hormones by the endocrine glands. This is secreted and then poured directly into the blood without any ducts. That is why, remember, the endocrine glands we also call as ductless glands. And then the last function of blood is under transport is distribution of heat. Blood helps in keeping the temperature of the body uniform by distributing the heat. So I told you, children, functions of blood we are doing under 6 points, and I hope you'll be able to understand and elaborate. The next category of function of the blood is protection. Under 3 points, the first says that blood forms a clot whenever there is a rupture or a cut in the blood vessel, and this clot prevents the further loss of blood and also the entry of the germs. Second, the WBCs or the white blood corpuscles of the blood, they engulf bacteria if they happen to be present in the body by any infection. Then the blood also produces antitoxins and antibodies. Remember, children, the word toxin means a poison. So if I just say toxin, this means a poison. And if I say antitoxin, that means an agent which is going to act against a poison. So this is certainly going to help the body. And antibodies, which are produced by exposure of a body to some microorganism or a pathogenic germ, right, or a disease causing substance. Coming next is the composition of blood. Blood consists of two parts, the liquid part or the fluid part called plasma, and the formed or cellular elements, which is made up of RBCs, WBCs and the platelets. When we talk of plasma, this is greater in composition or quantity, 55 to 60%, whereas the formed elements are only 40 to 45% of the blood. Composition of plasma. Alright, first the color. This is light yellow colored and pH is slightly alkaline. Alright. Then composition. Water is the maximum quantity present in plasma, which forms 90 to 92%. Proteins, which are called as plasma proteins, 7 to 8%. Inorganic salts, which include sodium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, they form some around 1%. And other substances which are in traces. So what are these other substances? Glucose, amino acids, which you remember, they are the building blocks of proteins. Then fibrinogen, the threads which form a clot during blood clotting process. Hormones, that is the endocrine secretions, the hormones or chemical messengers, and urea, which is the waste, etc. So this all that is present in plasma by percentage, you'll have to learn, children, which is the maximum and the least, and what are inorganic salts and other substances. Coming to the cellular parts or elements, there are three cellular elements: the RBCs, WBCs, and the platelets. They form 40 to 45% of the blood. RBCs, also called as red blood cells or erythrocytes, because the term erythros means red. WBCs or white blood cells or leukocytes, right? Because they are colorless. And the third one's platelets, also called as thrombocytes. So let us talk about one by one of some terms that you have to first take up before we come to details. I would like to show you a diagram here from page number 92, serum. Though we'll talk this later about blood clotting. Here you can see in a test tube there are a small portion of blood is taken. What you can see are certain fibrin threads, corpuscles, that means the cells of the blood, and serum. So if somebody asks you to define serum, what is serum? This is the plasma from which the protein fibrinogen has been removed. Let us suppose if you take this is entire blood, and suppose somebody removes these threads, or we call as fibrinogen, right? Then whatever is left is serum. So that means serum cannot clot, all right? Because the clotting threads, they are all removed. That we'll talk later. Just now I'm introducing the word, what is serum? By definition, it is the plasma. What is plasma? The fluid portion of the blood from which the protein, you just now said that there are 7 to 8% of proteins present. So if we remove one of the proteins called fibrinogen, then the plasma would be called as serum. Coming next to a topic that is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, it is a pigment which is made up of two parts, hemin plus globin. We can call this as the respiratory pigment, right? And where it is present, the red blood cells, they have a colorless spongy body or stroma which contains hemoglobin. So if this is the red blood cell, right, then the stroma, that means there's a colorless spongy body in red blood cells, and in the same colorless spongy body there is a respiratory pigment which is called as hemoglobin, right? So as I said, there are two parts, hemin and globin. Hemin means it is made up of iron, and protein is the globin part, all right? Then hemoglobin has an ability, as I already discussed, to combine readily with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, the unstable compound. Then it will give oxygen to the place wherever it's required, and again get free as hemoglobin to be used again. Hemoglobin can carry a very small quantity of carbon dioxide also in the form of carb-amino-hemoglobin. But the most dangerous combination occurs when hemoglobin, which has the maximum affinity or likeness for carbon monoxide, forms a stable compound called carboxyhemoglobin. This compound cuts down the capacity of oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin, and this results sometimes in death, all right? So this is called as carbon monoxide poisoning. So this is usually seen in cases where furnaces are burning in small rooms and people are not aware due to lack of ventilation, then the poisoning takes place. Then after this, we'll talk about the red blood cells. Today we'll begin with the cellular elements and we'll talk one by one. Today we'll talk only about red blood cells. Red blood cells, first I'm writing heading wise so that at the end we can compare all three. In adults, let's talk about the place of formation of red blood cells. First let us talk about the shape. They are called as erythrocytes. Why? Because erythros means red. Red blood cells, the shape is like a biconcave disc-like structure, flat in the center and thick and rounded at periphery. To imagine, if you look at this shape, by the side they look like this, right? Or if you take a hollow plastic ball, press it from the top and the bottom with your palms, both the palms, whatever the shape of the plastic ball acquires is the shape of a red blood cell. Diameter, 7 microns in diameter, which is a very small measurement. 1 micron, the sign like this, mu, it means 1 by 1000th of a millimeter, right? Number, in an adult male, there is presence of 5 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter. Or in an adult female, we can say it's 4.5 million per cubic millimeter. That means the number is different in males and in females. Production. They are produced, see, in adults we are talking about. So RBCs in adults are produced in the marrow of long bones, especially the ribs, the breastbone, and the ilium of the hip girdle. Alright? But in an embryo, that means a child when it is still forming in the mother's womb, RBCs are produced in the liver and the spleen. So there's a varied answer. Production would be different in an adult human and in an embryonic form. Average life is 120 days, roughly we can say 4 months, right? So this is the average life of RBCs. Then the formation you have seen where they are formed in an adult and in an embryo stage, and where are they destroyed after 4 months or roughly 120 days? They're destroyed in the spleen, liver and bone marrow. Now once they're destroyed, what happens? The iron part is retained in the liver and the rest is secreted as a bile pigment called bilirubin. Hemoglobin, just now we saw, it's present in the blood, in the RBCs in the colorless stroma. Nucleus, it's present in young RBCs but disappears in the mature RBCs. And that's also very interesting. Why it disappears? Because the adult RBCs, they can become more efficient to carry oxygen. So that we'll talk in our next topic just now. So nucleus, usually it's present in the young stage, in early stages of RBCs, but at adult form or a mature RBC form, they will disappear and RBCs become enucleated or without nucleus. Function of RBCs, they are very efficient in absorbing oxygen and they transport oxygen to the places wherever they are required and bring back carbon dioxide. There are two terms to talk about an abnormal increase of RBCs, right? People living usually in a hill station, roughly at a height of 4200 meter and above, they increase their RBCs by 30%, right? Now, a condition where we say abnormal increase of RBCs is there, this is called as polycythemia. Similarly, just the opposite, the condition where they abnormally decrease, it is called as erythropenia. So today, children, I have only talked about RBCs just now, right? And in my last topic for just now, there will be a topic just to say that how is it that the RBCs, they are so efficient to carry oxygen. This is a very, very important question, children, for reasoning part, right? That adult RBCs or mature RBCs do not have nucleus, explain why. Or why is mitochondria absent, or why is endoplasmic reticulum absent. So there are 3 points to study. That mammalian red blood cells, when mature, they do not have 3 things in particular. Number 1, they lost their nucleus. They do not have a nucleus. Second, they do not have mitochondria. And also they do not have ER or endoplasmic reticulum. Now, the question says why, right? The reasoning questions will always ask you why. So this loss of nucleus makes the RBCs biconcave. And when they become biconcave, this increases their surface area volume ratio, which increases the capacity to carry oxygen. In other words, we can say more RBCs can be accommodated in the same space, or they can be better oxygen carriers. So loss of oxygen means better carrying capacity for oxygen. Second, why do they lose mitochondria? Mitochondria, children, we remember as the powerhouses of the cell, the site of cellular respiration where ATP is produced. So if mitochondria are present in RBCs, maybe they start using their own oxygen, and that we do not want because we want them as efficient oxygen carriers. So in that regard, they lose their mitochondria so that they cannot use the oxygen for themselves in cellular respiration. And loss of mitochondria means full transport of glucose in blood plasma, which is unused by the RBCs. And finally, the last point for today, no endoplasmic reticulum means increased flexibility of RBCs for their movement through the narrow capillaries. So that's all for just now, children. I would just like to brief you once again what all things have we done today. We have started our chapter, the circulatory system, and I have started with the need for circulation, 3 types of fluids in our body, 2 types of circulatory system, open and closed, with examples, some examples of non-circulating fluids, characteristics of blood. Then we talked about the functions of blood, composition of blood in percentage and composition both, about plasma and the cellular elements. One by one we are starting. Today I have discussed RBCs. In the next video, I'll talk about WBCs and the platelets. Then some terms I have introduced like serum, hemoglobin, how it is having the maximum likeness with the carbon monoxide and it causes carbon monoxide poisoning. And a very important question for reasoning, that how RBCs are efficient to carry oxygen by the loss of these 3 structures and why. And the last thing for today, in a tabulated form, this will complete in our next video by the WBCs and RBCs. But today, it's only by WBCs and platelets, which we'll do next time. Today, we are only studying the RBCs. Here, under the following heads, later we'll compare the whole table once it is done. So that's all for today, children. I'm sending you some 3.5 pages for you to write. Number 1, 2, 3 and this half. So that's all for you to write just now. Be regular with your written works, children, and any doubts you are free to ask. Thank you.